story today will be told in just one part, and it's called The Well at the World's End. So a long time ago in the mists of Scotland, there was a woman who lived there in a small cottage, and she had a daughter who was about maybe 17 or 18 years old. And one day the mother decided she was going to make some biscuits. In Scotland they're called oatcakes. Okay, oatcakes. And to make those biscuits you need some water. Now of course in those days in the houses it wasn't just a case of turning on the tap and water coming out. You had to go and fetch water from a well and store it in your house in a jug or whatever. And she went to the water jug and it was empty. No water. So she went to the daughter and said, go to the well at the world's end and fetch a jug of water. And it was called the well at the world's end, not because it was at the end of the world, but it was quite far away. So she took the jug and off she went. Took her the whole day to get all the way to the well at the world's end. And she got there to the well. It's a stone round well going deep down into the ground. And there was a bucket on a handle that you turn and the bucket would go down into the well. And she lowered the bucket down and she just didn't hear a splash. There was no splash of water. It was just like thump. And she looked over the side. She looked down. There it was. The well at the world's end was completely dry. There was no water in the well at the world's end. And she sat down and she started to cry a little bit because she spent the whole day, going all the way to the well at the world's end. And there it was, dry as a stone. And she was crying and suddenly she was aware of a frog getting closer and closer. In Scotland the word for a frog is a puddock. So, puddock, yeah. And she thought to herself, oh, there's only a big fat green puddock there. Wonder what he wants. And the puddock opened his mouth and said, I can fill the well for you. You can fill the well? Really? Well, thanks. Can you fill it now? Yes. But you must promise me something. Oh, and she's thinking, well, queer puddock that can speak wants me to promise something now. Okay, it's only a little puddock. I'll promise whatever it wants. What would you like me to promise? Promise me. And you know what he's going to say, right? Promise me you will marry me. And the young girl thought, no, but she didn't say it out loud. She just thought it. And then she said, yeah, okay. But she had no intention of marrying the puddock. Okay, I'll marry you. And with that, the frog hopped up onto the edge of the well and dived in. And she just expected to hear a splat at the bottom as it hit the stone. But she didn't hear a splat, she heard a splash. And she looked in and the water had risen right up in the well. Beautiful, clear, crystal water. And she lowered the bucket, pulled it back up full of water, emptied it into the jug, and home she went with the jug. Gave it to the mother, and her mother made some biscuits. And that night they were sitting there by the fire, just sitting there enjoying the biscuits, when they would hear and the mother said, oh, there's somebody at the door, we should answer the door. And suddenly the girl had a bad feeling about this. She said, wait a minute. And then they heard it from outside. Open the door, my hinny, my love. Open the door, my one true heart. Remember the promise you and I made down at the well where we first met. And the mother said, what? Promise? What? Who is at the door? And the young girl said, oh, it's nothing. No, who is it? Really, I went to the well and it was like totally empty. And then along came this strange puddock and it was a speaking puddock? Yeah, and I kind of, he filled the well and helped me out. And oh, the mother said, well, open the door and let it in. No, let's not open the door and let it in. Not a good idea. Yeah, come on now, he's come all this way from the well at the world. Said, open the door. And they opened the door and there was the big fat green puddock sitting on the doorstep. Blah, blah, blah. And he hopped into the middle of the floor of their room, and he looked up with his big blinking yellow eyes, and he said, "Give me my supper, my hinny, my heart. Give me my supper, my one true love. Remember the promise that you and I made down at the well where we first met." And the mother said, "It's a poor wee puddock. Let's give him something to eat." No, Mum. Why not we just? He's come in now. He's seen the house. Let's put him out again outside. And the mother said, "What was his promise? What promise did you make at the well?" "Oh, no, it was nothing really. Honestly, it was just nothing. I can't. You know what? I can't remember what I promised. It was that long ago. I've just forgotten it." She said, "But it was just today." Yeah, but you know, I really can't remember what I promised. And the puddock was looking up at her with its yellow blinking eyes. And the mother said, "Such a poor thing. Let's give it something to eat." And so they fed it some of the food that they were eating, and the puddock ate it down. And then the puddock opened its mouth and said something very, very strange indeed. It looked up and said, "Chop off my head." Chop off my head just means chop off my head, right? Chop off my head, my hinny, my heart. Chop off my head, my own true love. Remember the promise that you and I made down at the well where we first met. And at those words, the mother said, "Oh, help! The creature's gone mad. It wants you to chop off its head." No, there'll be no chopping off of heads in here today. And she ran over to try and protect the puddock. It was too late. The daughter had snatched up the axe. And she obviously thinking to herself, "I will chop off its head." So, and she leapt forward, and the mother tried to protect the frog, but it was too late. The axe came down. But of course, this being a fairy tale, that's not the end of it, right? The axe came down, and the head did come off, but it turned out what grew out of the skin of the frog, standing tall and handsome in the room, was a handsome prince. He had, of course, been turned into that puddock. He said many years ago, he said he went to visit, there was an old woman with a cloak, and she lived in a village in a tumble-down cottage, and he'd been sent there by one of his parents to gather. He said he could hardly remember. He said it could have been bacon, it could have been eggs, or anything like that. And the next thing he knew, he'd been sent down there for some bacon or some eggs or something like that. And the next thing he knew, he'd been turned into the frog. And he'd been like that for many, many years. And finally, he'd been freed from the curse by the daughter of the old woman at the world's end, the well of the world's end. And of course, to show his gratitude, they married. And they lived happily ever after. I hope you enjoyed this story.